This new season of Rocko's Modern Life is new. New shows rockin' with Rocko.
I'm so happy.
New adventures heaping with Heffer.
I'll have 9 bratwurst supremes and a cup of wiener nuggets.
New tales spunked out with Spunky. New episodes bustin' out with Bigheads.
Quit looking at my butt!
And best of all,
It's inflatable.
Rocko's Modern Life this Sunday at 11:30, 10:30 Central, only on Nick.
Dig it.
Oh my! Welcome to Splat, a 90s podcast honoring the Slidefield past. I'm your anxious triangle-wearing wallaby, Brett.
And I'm your laid-back best bovine buddy, Alex. And Brett!
Yes, Alex?
What are we doing in O-Town today? Is this a special occasion, or are we just here to watch the fat heads on the boob tube again?
Well, Alex, as destiny would have it, we're celebrating another anniversary this time around.
2 in a row? Dude, you're giving me flashbacks of our first 2 podcast episodes.
Oh! I know, strange, isn't it? Guess much like the animation production pipeline, life happens in cycles. And while none of us are exactly riding a bike through O-Town to see all the history lined in its inked and painted walls, it'll still be a hoot to go through Rocko's history at his house and look back at all the zany, funny, uncomfortable, and heartfelt moments the show has to offer.
Gosh, I mean, there's so much to unpack for all this. Where do we even start? We've got to get the show going.
Yeah, let's do it. What's it, Spunky? Someone at the door?
There he is! Now all we have to do is get Brett drinking a glass of milk and we have our smash hit sequel.
What in the blazes?
He saw us!
Hey, what's going on? Carl, Russ, what do you two do filming my nakedness? Give me that camera.
Well, we were just in the neighborhood. Heard you guys were doing an anniversary episode, and we thought you could use some company.
Yeah, we just wanted to get on the action. Honest.
Oh, all right. You two are definitely big fans of the show like we are, so come on in and we'll get that episode started.
As long as we're not naked.
Let the party begin.
Let the TV party begin.
Oh my God. Okay, first of all, before we get started with the episode, I do have to say, this is the first time that we've ever had Russ and Carl together, and I don't know if both of you know this, but I mean, I've talked with Russ, I've talked with Carl, and I love you guys. I think you're awesome. And whenever I think Nick collectors, I think of these two. And when I think of just love for 90s in general, I think of these two. So these two together make me very, very excited. So I'm very excited both of you guys are here. Thanks for coming out again.
Appreciate it, man. Pleasure's mine. I feel like the pleasure's Carl's as well. Like this is obviously up our alley.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I think of like Nick collectors, I think of Russ. So, you know, I'm excited to be, and we've talked online before, but this is the first time we've been able to like chat, you know, face to face somewhat. So this is
totally,
a pleasure
it's cool,
for me as
right?
well.
It's like a cool level of respect, and you know, I love this podcast. I love just the whole nostalgia of it. I love other Nick collectors. It's really cool, right? So for me, this is like, I said it before, I'll say it again. You know, growing up, I thought I was like the only one into this, and then you find out you're not, and you connect, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely a Splat Attack first to have you two combine forces together. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun today. For those who don't know, we've had Carl and Russ on previous episodes. We've actually had Carl on our Camera Shy Patreon episode, which was a Rocko's Modern Life episode review. That was tons of fun. Definitely go check that out. And we've also had Carl on the Love Spanks I Love Chicken verses at the beginning of season 4 of Patreon, in addition to the Das Bus Yellow Fever verses, and most recently our Legends 30th anniversary special. So we're always excited to have our friends come back for more 90s Nick content to share with us.
Well, correct. You had said Carl was in the Camera Shy episode. That was Russ.
Oh, sorry. I meant Carl. My wires were crossed.
That's okay. Easy to do.
My Carl wires were crossed.
Too many characters to keep track of.
Yeah. I try. I got that file cabinet in my head where I keep track of every single episode by number, letter, and symbol. But some things slip through the cracks. I'm not a Conglommo employee. Bighead, you better keep up. You better keep up, or you'll get out.
You're fired.
Well, before we get going into the history of Rocko, let's talk about some of our childhood memories. What do you remember most vividly when you experienced Rocko as a child, and what kept you coming back?
I'd be happy to start because Rocko was my favorite show, my favorite Nicktoon on Nickelodeon, and just like there's Are You Afraid of the Dark, and then there's Rocko kind of right below it. So I loved Rocko's Modern Life. My best friend throughout grade school and junior high, Brendan Warren. Shout out to Brendan Warren. We both were Rocko fanatics, and we would quote the show incessantly. And I probably, grew a love for like impersonating voices because of all of the incredible character voices from Rocko. And so yeah, one episode in particular, I think it's called Zanzibar. It's the musical one. We would like sing those songs all the time in school. I'm sure the rest of our classmates hated us, but we weren't even like super environmentalists or anything like that. But it's so catchy and fun. How could you not, love that?
Rocko's an interesting one for me. I feel like that's when Nick really hit its stride. You had the first 3 Nicktoons come out. So you've got, Rugrats, Doug, Ren, and Stimpy. And then Rocko comes out, and it's kind of in that, the big 6, right? Because following that is All Real Monsters and then Hey Arnold. And then we kind of start to go out of the heyday at that point. I think we can all sort of agree. And there are other shows that are still wonderful that are going on and fun. I'm a big fan of As Told by Ginger. There are other shows that I really do love that came afterwards, but those I believe were the big 6. Mm-hmm. And Rocko is that sort of if you had Rugrats on the really honest side, sort of, and then you follow it up with Doug. Beside that is of course Rocko, and then on the extreme is Ren and Stimpy. And so Rocko fits that spot where it's like you feel like you're getting away with something by watching it because the humor is so out there, but your parents are still letting you watch it. So it kind of had that zone for me, and I just loved it. It was always a good time when it came on, and I just have a lot of great fond memories, just funny memories of it. And it's sort of one of those shows that it's a lot of eye candy. The colors, the sounds, even now, like the music will just randomly play in my head at any given moment. And you just feel like, even watching it today, watching it now, it's like it's smart. To rewatch it again as an adult, it's actually a lot smarter than I think we could possibly understand as kids.
Yeah. Joe Murray definitely knew what he was doing with putting layers of humor and characterization into this show.
And there's like tropes that are still used in shows today, like you still and it harkens back to a lot of really interesting things.
Yeah, well, we were talking about in the Love Spanked versus episode, all of the similarities between Rocko and SpongeBob, and the influence that and it's so cool to see the progression from like Ren and Stimpy with the gross ups into Rocko into SpongeBob, to see that progression. I don't know where it's been after SpongeBob. I kind of quit watching when SpongeBob came along, but
yeah, that's a fair assessment. A lot of I would say that Ren and Stimpy and Rocko sowed the seeds for SpongeBob to germinate, because it lifts a lot of humor from both of them, both visually and writing wise. And also you have Doug Lawrence, who plays Filburt on Rocko, move on over to SpongeBob as Plankton, the voice of Plankton, and also a writer and director. And then you got, of course, the legendary Tom Kenny, who does the voice of Heffer here, go on to do the titular character SpongeBob. It's got it in its DNA, so it's hard to shake from it, even if it's a very divisive Nicktoon, and also like a threshold of like Nick fans where you kind of draw the line whether you're more on the classic side or more on the modern side. But regardless of where fans stand, no one can deny that Rocko is a cartoon of its own breed, and all the better for it for having that unique, crazy identity that feels humble like Doug, but also extreme like Ren and Stimpy.
For me, and I had mentioned this before, I think on the last two times we've talked about Rocko, but as a kid, it didn't connect with me as a kid. I remember only laughing at a couple of things, but I think it was like Russ was talking about how smart it was. I think it was targeting more an older audience than what I was, and I just didn't connect with it because Ren and Stimpy was really, really smart at being stupid. Rocko was very, very smart at making fun of what was going on in the 90s at the time, and I didn't know any of that. And the only thing I saw was a bunch of the slapstick, goofy humor. And as much as I loved Ren and Stimpy, and still do, as a kid, I didn't quite get it. Spunky, I just didn't care for Spunky. I didn't care for Heffer. I especially didn't care for Heffer. I just thought he was an awful, awful friend. And why is Rocko keep hanging out with him? And then there were some gross out humor in here, which ironically, Ren and Stimpy never bothered me with its gross ups and things like that. But some of the ideas for this one really got to me, especially when they got to the amusement park and did some of the like the nosebleed stuff. Was like, I don't like that at all. But that was young child me. When I grew up and I got back into Nickelodeon again, and I have yet, even as of the time of this recording, I have yet to watch the whole series again. Just because I haven't had the time. I really wanted to go back and watch the series and prep for this episode. But for those of you who don't know, whenever I'm constantly having to edit for other episodes that we're working on, I don't have the time, much of the time, to binge watch entire shows. So I haven't had the chance to really watch any Rocko outside of just the few episodes that we've covered on the podcast so far. And what I've seen, oh my gosh, it's hysterical. I totally connect with it now because I don't want to say I'm the target audience, but I'm now as an adult realizing what was going on in the 90s while also watching a show that's making fun of all these tropes, and it's brilliant. And I'm very excited to go back and watch the rest of the show. So a lot of my impressions throughout this episode is going to be mostly information giving and basic childhood memories, but that's why we've got the rest here. And if you really want some good, strong memories and someone who's very, very passionate about Rocko, I hand the microphone to Mr. Brett.
Well, for anyone who may or may not know, I am a diehard Rocko fan. This show heavily influenced my art style and my love of cartoons growing up, along with Doug and Courage the Cowardly Dog, which I mentioned in previous episodes on this podcast. And I was there since day one, so it's a real blast from the past to be celebrating the 30th anniversary and like just warp back to, what was it? I was 5 years old when I saw Rocko's Modern Life, and I'm going to show it on screen, but I actually have a picture of the original poster I got from Toy Works one Saturday when I spent my $5 allowance for doing chores on it. And I immediately hung it up on my wall. I'm like, wow, what an amazing cartoon. I just kept staring and studying all the colors on it. I kept looking at like all the details of Rocko's shirt and Spunky, and I'm just like, I want to make that someday. And it felt really special to have something to really appreciate on a whole new level that, you know, maybe not everyone at school understood, but at least I could appreciate it for what it was. And there were a few friends I've made along the way who also share that passion for it. So it's great to celebrate the show. It's great to see how far it's come and just kind of dive and weave and duck and bob through all the different areas of its legacy to see what really tickled our fancy and just give us those wonderful memories that we still enjoy today and beyond.
Well said, Brett.
Well, I guess we're going to go into Rocko's history a little bit. I just want to preface with this that we had mentioned previously in the Hey Arnold Jungle Saga episode that we did that having Joe Murray on our episode or podcast would complete my personal Mount Rushmore of heroes I look up to. Well, I contacted him a couple times leading up to this episode, and I described the situation of, what we do for a podcast that were mainly video based, and that seemed to concern him a bit because he's much older now, and maybe he just prefers having more privacy, but for reasons that I don't fully understand but still respect, he declined our invitation to be on this episode. So with that being said, he did give me access to his book, Creating Animated Cartoons with Character, which I had studied a bit for this, from 2010. So I'm very grateful for that. So what Joe Murray mentions on his lead into animation, because he got his start in the 80s before he got going with Rocko. He mentions on page 19 of the book, running my own studio, doing mostly advertising illustration work was stable, but I felt unfulfilled without expressing my creative side or making someone laugh with my cartoons. I continued to pursue syndication for my comic strips, but each attempt was met with encouragement and no contract. On the last strip, I got a call from a syndicate editor who said I was trying to do too much with a small strip. You always seem to run out of room, he said. You try and tell stories that are too big for a comic strip. Have you ever considered animation? No, I grunted, and thanked him for yet another encouraging rejection. What I didn't know then was how prophetic he really was. So, much like Craig Bartlett, who also did some cartoon strips and even the penny cartoons on Pee-wee's Playhouse, he also got his feet wet drawing and doing different things that helped form the ideas, and he didn't jump into the series right away. So it's fun to see some behind events transpire here.
It's very, very similar beats to what Mark Weiner went through in getting his show off the ground.
Right. Yeah. There's like a primordial developmental phase where you get little hints of it here and there, and then it starts to just get more and more and more formed. He also goes on to say on the premiere of the Rocko's Modern Life series when it first aired, it was the fall of 1993. I was sitting in a Los Angeles eatery awaiting the primetime premiere of my own Nickelodeon animated series, Rocko's Modern Life, with both nervousness and shock. My crew of 50, the ones who had survived the previous 9 months, were with me, also eager to see whether my challenge would come true. The challenge that I had laid out at the beginning of the journey of creating a show we would all be proud to watch, and that would thoroughly entertain us. It was, after all, television animation, one of the roughest canvases any artist could ever work on. As the sometimes grumpy producer and director of this amazing crew in LA, and a crew of 200 in Korea, I had never experienced a year in which I felt so creatively energized, engulfed, and pushed to the limit, and proud of the artists working side by side with me. In short, up to that point in my life, I had never felt so totally alive. While we were waiting, I began to think, how did I get here? An independent animated filmmaker with no TV experience, producing and directing my own show on a well-known cable network? Sounds like it really hit him. It seemed just unreal to be there, but of course, we're all happy that he made it happen thanks to talking to certain people at Nickelodeon and doing the Trash Show Madness pilot for them.
Who's responsible for this? Nick's gonna tell who makes Rocko. Meet the creator.
Hi, I'm Joe Murray. I'd like to show you around the studio. This is the background department. Hello. Hi.
Hi, hello.
Everything in the show needs to be closely monitored and designed.
I think the best outfit in the entire show is Rocko's shirt.
My God! Hey!
In here we have one of our more psychotic writers.
It's an unusual, really interesting place to work.
Now you know who's responsible for Rocko.
This is the inside of Rocko's body.
On the only network for you. Who's responsible for this? Nick's gonna tell who makes Rocko.
I would love to be more like Rocko.
Meet Joe Murray, the creator.
I used to draw endlessly. There was a period of time where I wanted to be an astronaut. About the time of late elementary school, I decided I wanted to be a cartoonist. I had a TV fall on my head when I was a kid, which is probably why I'm producing television right now.
Now you know who's responsible for Rocko.
Rocko is a real hero.
On the only network for you.
Seemed like it was really right place at the right time. I was reading that he was sort of someone with no experience. They were a network with new experience, and they were trying whatever. And they were throwing whatever to the wall and see what stuck. And, he kind of, I'm simplifying it, but it sounds like he sort of just showed up on their doorstep with, very loose leaf drawings and those turned into what was this magnificent show. And it would never happen that way these days.
No. I think there were something about the way the planets aligned in the late 80s, early 90s just bust the doors wide open, not only for Rocko, but for numerous other shows that I study up on for this podcast, and even just for my own entertainment, where there was a lot of freedom for creatives to do whatever they wanted and just test things out and see what happens. And a lot of it was rough and zany and wild and very much counterculture to the safe, like toy-based animation of the mid-'80s that were just literally producing cheap, crappy-looking cartoons for the sake of marketing purposes or, selling toys to kids. So I found that very refreshing to see all those common parallels. And as an artist and someone with an animation degree, I know it's very difficult to create something original these days, which is why a lot of people steer more towards nostalgic things or use nostalgic elements in their content to make it feel familiar and tap into those special feelings.
I was just gonna say, there's a great book. I think it's called Nickelodeon Nation. Have you guys read this?
I have not.
It gets into the market of the television scene in that time era, and just like you said, Brett, the planets really did align. Cable was brand new. It was like the Wild West. Nobody knew what to do with it yet. You didn't have the pressures of the advertisers saying, you got to give me something I can sell toys to, so that it really was just, let's make the best show we can so that people will buy our network for their cable. And so, yeah, it's like, I can't think, there are duds, right? There are duds from Nickelodeon from that era, but even the duds are still fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Because honestly, if you really think about it, because this is something I think that the general 90s Nick fans take for granted, think about any other network and what was playing on that network at the time, especially in animation. By this time, when Rocko came out, we've already had the big three Nicktoons, and they've already shaken up animation. And you're starting to get some other networks that are getting smart with their animation. Because, Fox Kids had Batman the Animated Series, which is still one of the best Batman adaptations. And they did have some smart kid shows, especially in animation. But they're still going for that cash cow. Because most of them felt safe. There was a new Addams Family cartoon. They were starting to push for more superheroes because Batman was huge. And then they were also pulling comic strip. Mother Goose and Grimm was one of the new ones. And then they would pull out things that were trying to carry out what the Turtles had started with. As much as I loved it, but it's pretty much a forgotten thing now. But the Wild West Cowboys of Moo Mesa, they're still pushing for those. It's a safe place that's okay for mom and dad to let their kids watch on Saturday mornings or after school. But Nickelodeon had great success with letting creators do their job. And what is a fun show? What is something that we would want to watch? And because it worked so well for Nickelodeon before, and they are now officially at a place where they don't have to worry about, is this going to work? Because when Nickelodeon first started, they put all their baskets in, or put all their eggs in a basket to make sure this is going to work. And it was a big risk, especially for the three Nicktoons. But now that's going full swing. And now you've got Snick, which is also going full swing. And now it's time to expand on that. So it didn't feel like as much, it still didn't feel, well, it didn't feel like a risk. It felt like a calculated assessment that these others are working great. Let's give somebody else a chance to keep something new fresh. And could you imagine Rocko being on any other network and not have the freedom that they had on Nickelodeon? No, it's not going to work. It worked for Nickelodeon, and they we want more of this because more kids want this. And not only that, but their parents want this too. And I guarantee there were more parents who were watching Nickelodeon with their kids than just about any other network. They might have been in the room when Turtles was on, but they weren't watching. They were probably reading the newspaper or something.
Yeah. To this day, my mom can quote lines from Salute Your Shorts or Hey Dude, or, because she would stop on the way, from point A to point B and watch a scene with me.
Yeah, my dad used to watch Are You Afraid of the Dark with me on Snick. That's how I got into the show. So it seems like there's something for everyone to enjoy together, not just the kids or even not just the adults. It's like this perfect playground on TV where everyone can come together and just feel alive with all the energy. Nickelodeon was just bursting out of the screen with its killer content. I actually have some quick words on Joe Murray talking about his Rocko pilot when he was first making it, which we talked about in our favorite pilot episodes way back at the premiere of season 4 of our podcast. He says, when I prepared the Rocko pilot, I already had a studio and had done films previously, so I was better equipped to handle the pilot myself with a staff expansion. We animated it all in-house and simply handed over the finished videotape. And I don't really have too much to add to that other than the pilot was about 8 minutes instead of the 11 minutes when it was redone for a series, very much how the Herano pilot was expanded and redone for its own series. But that was a lot of the testing ground where Rocko was finally taking shape. There's subtle differences that ended up changing. I found out that his skin used to be yellow because the toy manufacturer who ended up not picking up Rocko to do a toy line said, "Oh, that looks too much like The Simpsons. We can't do that." And it inadvertently affected its character design. So I find little tidbits like that fascinating when I see Rocko as a series taking shape. And of course, the pilot just has Carlos Alazraqui doing the voice work for it. He did both Spunky and Rocko. And none of the other main characters are in there. It's just kind of like it's got an independent film feel where you just got these two characters going through a simple situation that's gone awry, and you have a villain, which is Earl the Bulldog, trying to, cause havoc while Rocko's just trying to take out the trash and not lose Spunky at the same time. So I think that little compact teaser of what Rocko's life could be on an average day really opened up the possibilities for if it were to expand beyond his house into the neighborhood, into the city, into the entirety of O-Town with more characters who he would interact with.
I didn't know that about the action figures. That's very interesting. And I always questioned why they didn't exist, because it's kind of haphazard what shows do and don't have them. I mean, Rugrats had 1 million toys, of course, that makes sense. But Ren and Stimpy has a pretty killer original action figure line. There's about, I think, 6 or 8 figures, and they're great. Like they're really great. And then, Ariel Monsters has a beautiful line as well. And but in between that, you have some shows that don't. And I'd love for Doug. Doug would have been nice, and I'd love Rocko. And of course, now we have the Funkos, and we have some Culture Fly figures and things of that nature, but it's not the same. It's not that 90s line.
Yeah, I mean, Cat Dog. Holy crap, the amount of Cat Dog merch there is. And how many times can you do the same toy over and over and over and over and over and over and over? Meanwhile, Rocko has got next to nothing.
Was Cat Dog that big to necessitate?
No.
I don't even remember liking it as much as Rocko.
No, and that's a very interesting thing. You see that in certain shows where the studio has really decided before the launch that this is the next big thing. And so they clearly go out there and sell the crap out of it to merchandisers, and they produce a bunch of stuff, and then the show doesn't hit. And now we've got this wave of Cat Dog. There's 900 different Cat Dog plushies. Nobody wants a single one of them, right? I mean, I've got them because I'll see them at a garage sale, but I'm not going out of my way to collect them. It's kind of like that. Whereas then you get a show like Rocko's Modern Life, and one of the things I love is to show off my Nick collection, and this is just such a hard one to do, because you've got a Hardee's fast food, toy set. You've got some plush. You know, I think there's a Rocko, a Spunky, and a Heffer. I think that's it. And you've got a Super NES game. And then outside of that, you know, you got some clothes. You got, you know, maybe a little bit of this and that. But
Also, Nick Box Finals.
that's like the modern stuff. But like the vintage, there's nothing, right? It's so you could collect everything from Rocko's Modern Life vintage for, you could have the whole lot for under $500. I mean, that never happened.
Now, before we started the episode, you were saying that there was something that was in Australia. What was that?
So I believe, and I have to check this out, but I believe that the Australian were the plushes. I don't believe the plush were mass marketed here. I think, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's how they went, and that's why they're so expensive now. So to find them is, you know, to spend $100 on each plush. But pretty much everything else is, you know, most of the time the Rocko merchandise you see is grouped with other things. You'll see it on something advertising, you know, all the Nicktoons. That's really what you get. And when you look at something like All Real Monsters, which is not, in my opinion, it's a great show, but it's not Rocko's Modern Life. But the amount of merchandise for that show, a toy line, a candy line, cookie jars, like, you know, like everything. It's got everything. And it's just very interesting to see. We get some stuff and then we don't get stuff.
It's almost like a turning of the tides with pop culture, because as things got more popular in the mid to late 90s, so did the merchandise marketing campaigns, where they almost put the horse before the cart, where they're thinking about toys more so than the content of the shows that they are based on. So I find that flip-flopping really interesting, because it was very creator-driven early on, and then it was more about, okay, how can we get this in front of every kid in America, and we're going to do like toys, we're going to do fast food promotions and all that stuff. And that seemed to edge out a little bit of the creativity and the magic that made earlier Nicktoons and other shows of the era special.
I think that's what's wrong with the networks even today, and Nickelodeon. Like, as soon as you hit like 95, 96, they were generating so much cash that you don't want to risk that cash cow or those cash cows. But like today, it's the networks. They're like, how do we make a show? How do we make kids watch this show, rather than how do we make a show kids want to watch? And that's, you know, that's the difference between like Rocko's Modern Life and, you know, the new Rugrats. You know.
But I see here, right, you got some more notes about voice actors.
Yes, of course we all know that, you know, Carlos Alazraqui played Rocko and Spunky. We've got Doug Lawrence, who played Filburt. Tom Kenny played Heffer. Charlie Adler, who played Ed and Bev Bighead. And then Joe Murray himself playing Ralph/Rachel Bighead, depending on how you're familiar with that character. What Joe Murray had to say on casting voice actors for the pilot, he says, since the pilot for Rocko's Modern Life featured only Carlos Alazraqui doing the voices of Rocko and Spunky, which I just mentioned, we had to cast the rest of the series once the show was well into production. We had begun storyboarding the episodes, and Doug Lawrence, who was also an actor, came in to direct one of the storyboard teams. He took a particular liking to the neurotic turtle character named Filburt, and felt like he knew what made him tick. When we put out the call for voice auditions, I received boxes and boxes of cassettes, which is what we used back then. Unbeknownst to me, Doug Lawrence had stuck his audition tape in the box, most likely with help from Suzanne Benton, who was our voice and script coordinator. After nearly dozing off listening to audition after audition, I put in one more tape of someone voicing Filburt and quite literally jumped up yelling, "That's it!" I didn't find out until later that it was Doug Lawrence, so I can't be accused of playing favorites. After he landed that role, it's funny how the episodes he directed always seem to feature a lot of Filburt. Yeah, I don't know if any of you guys have seen this, but I'm going to put a link in the description once this episode releases, is that they did a Rocko's Modern Life live like table read of Wacky Deli back in 2012 in downtown LA at an independent theater there, and just hearing their stories of, you know, getting into the show and none of them really having any experience. You know, this was before all of them were famous and legendary thanks to all their IMDb credits. And I just love how it's like they're they're hanging out as if it was the first day of Rocko all over again with this reunion. They all fit into their roles naturally as they're saying all their different lines. And then I remember them saying like, well, Carlos and Tom, I think, yeah, they knew each other. They like lived a block away from each other. And Tom mentioned the job to Carlos, who was working at a gym. So he had no previous experience with voice acting, and he just gave it like this kind of Australian accent that came out of nowhere that was mixed in with a little bit of Brooklyn, and that's how Rocko's voice was formed. So it goes to show you how serendipitous a lot of these things are pieced together to create the whole series. With Doug Lawrence's, also known as Mr. Lawrence on SpongeBob, who came into it by just kind of sneaking his audition tape in to give, Filburt his like Woody Allen-esque personality. And then, Tom Kenny also mentioned in that live show how he came up with the voice of Heffer as essentially being based off of his 13-year-old either brother or cousin, where he kind of talked like this while he was going through puberty and be like, yeah, Rock, let's do it. Kind of very upbeat, but also kind of annoying to be around. So he just kind of took inspiration from that and made it its own. So you never really know where these kinds of elements are going to come from, but when they put together, man, is it like an explosion of creative beauty.
Heffer's always got that, like, who's that guy on The Simpsons? The guy
Gumble?
that's like, the guy that's going through like puberty. My girlfriend's gonna kill me.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
It's like,
I don't even think
Heffer's
he has a name.
like on the high end of that always.
I have the number 47, the 13, an order of number 6, extra coleslaw, and a large mayonnaise. Here's your taco, mister. Whoops, fell in the fryer. I'll get it out. Oh!
Oh, yeah. Joel Murray also mentions Carlos's stand-up comic experience and how that played into his voice acting roles. He says, Carlos L. Rocky was a stand-up comic in San Francisco when he auditioned for the characters Rocko and Spunky. Tom Kenny was an actor from Mr. Show and a stand-up comic when he auditioned for Heffer. For both men, it was their first voice acting gig, and both went on to great successes, both also voice characters on Camp Lazlo, which is a Cartoon Network series that premiered in the early 2000s that kind of has a Salute Your Shorts vibe to it as well. Tom Kenny mentions on his voice acting for Rocko as well, actors love to be let off the leash and just run around. I got spoiled right out of the gate on Rocko, having Carlos, Charlie, and Mr. Lawrence to bounce off of. Man, those were some wild sessions. I take it seriously. I read every script and storyboard before I show up at a session, mostly because the more you know about a story, plot, and jokes in the script, the more thought you can give to tweaking things and making it the funniest or most dramatic it can be. Just some more quick tidbits about Rocko before we go into more of his legacy stuff and like a more holistic picture. One of the shorts that Joe Murray worked on that led to him producing the pilot was this like 2-minute animated short called The Chore, which we'll have a link to as well in the description. And essentially he just recorded like a pencil test without even a register bar. Like I think he put all the papers against like this pie, like baking tin, and he just recorded all the sounds at home, like the sound of a fridge and a lawnmower, and doing all the voice work. And it's essentially just a guy trying to push a cat out a door with comical effect, but it was enough. It got him enough attention at independent film festivals that it got the ball rolling for him to have the opportunity to produce, a pilot and more stuff, including the MTV bumper that we all know and love, where it shows an early version of Heffer and even the Rocko's Modern Life TV that shows at the beginning of the show, where like this guy is running into it and there's some jungle music playing. And then when he goes into the doors of the TV, this big yellow round cow just kind of flies out, and then you see the MTV logo with grill marks on it. So that was made in 1988, a few years before that. And then right before Rocko's Modern Life, the Trash Show Madness pilot came out in early 1993. We had the independent animated film My Dog Zero, where the previous version of Spunky came to life, which is the Dog Zero, where this man adopts a dog from a pound. He's not too bright. He's a little bit different than all the other dogs who are like showboating to get this man's attention to have him adopt him, but he loves him for what he is, and they try to do simple things with hilarious effect like play fetch and whatnot. Of course, since we're celebrating the 30th anniversary, the show premiered on September 18th, 1993, and ran until November 24th, 1996, for which it lasted 4 seasons and 52 episodes in total. We also mentioned that because of the success, there's also been TV DVD box sets that were produced by Shout Factory, for which Joe Murray did all the original artwork for. I personally have the complete series one because I like having everything together, and it's just a beautiful set to be able to pluck all the seasons out of. But there's also separate volumes as well available. There's also a comic book series, which originally was produced by Marvel around 1993, 1994, which had a few issues made. And then, of course, it got like a second wind in the mid-2010s, mid to late 2010s under Boom Studios. So there's now like at least 6 issues under there. There's also, some T-shirts. There were posters. Of course, Nick box merch nowadays, which I showed some of, like the vinyl figures and shirts and whatnot.
I'm fortunate that I have a big background in licensing and creation of merchandise and pop culture, and I do have a sinking suspicion that a lot of the troubles with merchandise for Rocko's Modern Life actually comes down to character design. And if you watch any of those shows like The Toys That Made Us, things like that on Netflix, you start to hear that a lot of the time they would change character design in order for companies to produce merchandise. So when you look at a character like Heffer, the shape of his head, the skinniness of his arms, these are very difficult things to produce. That's why nowadays this makes sense. But if you go back to the 90s, when we didn't have the technology we have today, we didn't have the ability to produce, vinyl figures in the way we can. Not something that lends to action figures well, not something that lends to plush well, not something that lends to a lot of those type of things very, very well. And I would wager to bet that that is a big reason why companies shied away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I will say just a couple of notes about the various successes that you've seen with Rocko. I'm actually on the hunt for one of them right now, and as soon as I find it, I'll share it with you. But the resurgence of retro-based merchandise in modern time is over at Box Lunch, the store. They had a Rocko shirt, not this one, but it was the one from the show that Rocko wears, the button up with the different triangles. That was really cool to see. But one of the retro things that I remember seeing, which I was really surprised to see, I'm still looking for it. As soon as I find it, I'll share it with you. But they had a character, as in like a person in a suit going around Nickelodeon Studios as Rocko, which I thought was pretty cool because you always see Ren and Stimpy, you always see Tommy, Chucky, and Angelica, but very rarely would you see a Rocko. And I don't remember where I saw it. I don't remember if it was at a Nick Takes Over Your School. I want to say it was a Nick Takes Over Your School. It could have been Nickelodeon Studios. I don't know where, but
I will say I'm looking at a photo of it right now, and it turns out they also had Batley from Eureka's cast.
They did. You're looking for the same one that I'm looking for. You're looking for the one I was looking for.
He looks like he's being held hostage by Batley.
Yeah. Yeah, posing with some kids. Oh, there he is backstage with a shirt unbuttoned. Does that mean he's slightly naked?
Actually, you know what's interesting? There's a giant crumb behind one of them, too. So, I mean, they evidently did a lot of characters.
Yeah, more than I thought originally. Oh, there he is next to the slime geyser. Oh, yeah. That's fun.
That one with the shirt off must have been when he was working the hotline.
Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Rocko. This is Bighead. So yes, we've already touched the base on most of the history of Rocko. There's really not much to cover, unfortunately, aside from like a little bit of merchandise, the series coming to fruition on Nickelodeon, and that's pretty much it. But Rocko luckily got a second wind through Netflix with its Static Cling reboot on August 9th, 2019. And it was originally meant to premiere on November 2018, but through some deal negotiations, it got pushed back. Luckily, it did premiere on its date, and it was met with generally positive fanfare from the fans. It is set in present-day O-Town with even more crazy happenings since the 90s, still parroting a lot of pop culture stuff such as the iPhone and Starbucks and food trucks and energy drinks, you name it. It focuses on Rocko's quest to retrieve Rachel Bighead and bring her back to her parents, and also save the Fatheads in-show cartoon series. It also handles themes of change and transition in life while also poking fun at nostalgia-based pop culture and how it differs today. And I actually have some art pieces that I've done based on this when it first came out. So I ended up doing a Netflix special art piece with Zim and Rocko, underneath the arms of the big Netflix N. We'll show that on screen because that seemed to take off, and it was actually picked up by an online newspaper to advertise the premiere. I also have some artwork of Rocko and Rachel Bighead behind the TV, kind of staring at it. And the fun thing about this piece of art is that when I posted it on Facebook, back when I was on Facebook, I got into a big argument with a 90s Nick fan on the page that I used to be an admin of, saying, "You didn't do that art. That was made by the creators." And I'm like, no, here's the master file. See, I'm turning on and off all the layers. I drew it, not them. I guess he was just dazzled by how well I was able to mimic the art style because it was one of my main influences.
I feel like if you haven't had an argument with another Nick person in like a Facebook group, you might not be really a fan. Like, I think we've all had that happen.
Check that out, art for yourself. If you want prints, I can sell them independently. Otherwise, that's my plug. And we'll go to notable characters next because we're here for Rocko.
Whoop, whoop.
So we all know the main protagonist. We're going to start with our titular character, Rocko Rama. And yes, that's his last name, but it's never mentioned in the series. It was mentioned in the scripts. That's how we know. He was in his early 20s in the original series and early 40s in Static Cling. His last name is a nod to the O-Rama marketing signage of the 1950s popping up everywhere. And fun fact, because I actually did look this up, O-Rama, quote unquote, is an informal version of the Greek root horama, meaning sight or view. And today, Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines the meaning as a spectacular display or extravagant spectacle of an event. Seems pretty fitting, no? Rocko is also noted for his meek demeanor, short stature, as wallabies are smaller than kangaroos in the marsupial family. Getting tongue-tied here. And also has a big heart, as he does his absolute best to keep his head screwed on tight in a chaotic, ever-changing world that is full of wild surprises. Additionally, Rocko lives next door to disgruntled neighbor and white-collar paper pusher Ed Bighead, and has even worked for him in the season 1 episode Canned as a Conglomero product tester. Speaking of careers, Rocko initially began as a comic book clerk. He's also held part-time jobs as a plumber's assistant, a tattoo artist, a naughty hotline operator, an underwear model, a bowler, animation director and voice actor, a Betty Baloney for Wacky Deli, a private driving instructor, and a tow truck driver. As of the Static Cling reboot, he is currently unemployed as his comic shop job has been replaced by a 3D printing kiosk. Rocko originally worked at the Super Lotto Comics megastore run by Mr. Dupet, who is also Ed Bighead's boss, and later at Kind of Lotto Comics under Mr. Smitty, the smoldering toad, as he'd often say. Rocko's hobbies include jackhammering, reading comics, camping, skiing, board games, and house cleaning, which I all derived from things he did for fun in the episodes. Of course, he is voiced by the legendary Carl Russ. So how do you guys relate to Rocko as a child back in the 90s and as an adult now?
First of all, I want to point out there are two things, and we'll get to the other one in a bit, but there's two things that always get shared all over Facebook or all over Instagram that concerns Rocko's job. Brett, you know which one this is?
Jackhammering? Or the...
No. It's when he was working for the telephone hotline.
Oh, yeah.
That one gets shared all the time. And it was, a 30-second bit on the show, and that was it. It was a one-time thing. The other one I'll get to whenever we get to Heffer. But...
I personally like the sign behind him when he's operating the hotline where it says, "Remember, be hot, be naughty, be courteous."
But the one thing that I did resonate with in terms of Rocko, which is also the same thing that I kind of got from Doug was just how genuinely nice he was. And whereas in Doug was surrounded by wonderful people outside of just a couple. It was kind of the opposite for Rocko, and being an adult now, I totally get it, because you're constantly surrounded by less than nice people, and it ranges from just a mild annoyance to just downright. And
sometimes for no good reason too.
And you're stuck trying to still have to be polite, still have to be professional, still have to treat them with some modicum of humanity, even if you feel like they don't deserve it. I mean, we all know those people who don't practice humanity, and then there's people who, no matter how poorly they're treated, they're still going to try. And that's what Rocko reminds me of. He reminds me of that one person who will keep trying to be nice. He'll have moments of breaking, like we all do, but he seems to be, and understandably so, the most relatable character of the entire show.
Yeah. Yeah, I relate to him a lot as someone who really cares about the people who are closest to him in his life. In this case, Filbert and Heffer, because his family's all the way in Australia. So, we never really get any mention of them except for in the Camera Shy episode of all places, or even briefly in that photo frame in Trasho Madness where we see him with his parents. Yeah, I feel like I relate to him even more so now, just because he's got a lot of anxiety of how to function in an ever-changing, chaotic world, and he's just trying to do his best. But I really appreciate his big heart and just wanting to keep life simple and sensible. And I also love his bond with Spunky too, because whether you like Spunky or not, I think it's very special to see them, especially when he reminisces in certain episodes where, they go back when he first got Spunky, or like he's just doing something like playing fetch, or even the lengths he goes to save him from harm from other characters who endanger Spunky. I appreciate, just having that kind of connection where you're willing to put your own life on the line to save someone or something that matters more than life itself to you. And it's a key component to what makes Rocko's Modern Life successful, other than just him, Heffer, and Filbert having, relatively immature 20-something hijinks now that they're fresh into the adult world.
It's so funny watching Rocko now versus watching through the lens of, 7-8-year-old. I'd never picked up on those, like, trying to adult themes like you were talking about, getting your first credit card and making a mess out of it. Trying to hold down a job, trying to date. I didn't pick up on those then, but rewatching now, it's this whole nother world of like, the life of O-Town. It's really cool to see.
It really hits you like a steamroller. Like, I even remember when I had to go do my grandmother's laundry for her, and all I thought about was the Unbalanced Load episode at the end of season 1, because it felt like that. I had this big, hamper full of all these weird clothes things I didn't want to touch, and I had to figure out how to use industrial-sized washer and hope I don't lose a sock in there to the demon socks who would, like, try to grab things when you weren't looking, like your money. And just even getting a dollar bill to go through the change machine. It's so exaggerated, yet it just brings me a lot of peace knowing that I'm not alone in these little mundane everyday struggles, because cartoonists like Joe Murray have exemplified it through their stories.
Well, Brett, laundry day.
It's a very dangerous day. It is. Also trash day.
Yep. And bath day.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like he's the eye of the storm, right? So everything else is just chaos around him. He's sort of the narrator of the journey that we're on. And if I'm getting really deep, isn't that how we all are? We're sort of the narrator of our own stories, and everybody else is the chaos around us. I think we're all individually sort of living that. And it's like Rocko is so vanilla compared to the crazy mix of flavors going on. And I think it's that dull sort of beating of a drum that is so consistent, and that's so important because it takes us through that story. And so, I feel like I always really connected with Doug, and I think Rocko is not that far off Doug. And so for me, it's there's just something about Rocko that I think we all like. We all kind of want to be. We all want that temperament.
Let's move on to Heifer Wolf, shall we? We know he's in his late 20s in the original series and also late 40s in Static Cling. So, same age range as Rocko. He's a steer adopted by wolves with an insatiable appetite, mostly for his favorite junk food, pasture puffies. He's a lovable, occasionally dependable friend who, while isn't the sharpest tool in the shed, is there to support his best buddy, as his lack of fearing life perfectly foils Rocko's anxiety, and foil in the literary sense, not aluminum foil. He has also learned about his adopted origins in the episode Who's for Dinner, affirming that he's a steer, not a cow, which is a running gag for him. Heifer's occupations during the series include Christmas tree farmer, a bowler, golf course groundskeeper, mail carrier, security guard, underwear model stand-in, wiener quality assurance tester, waiter/barista at the Chameleon Brothers Cafe, and a cashier at the Choky/Chewy Chicken restaurant. Heifer is adored by his mother, Virginia, and will often put his life on the line to save Rocko from peril. Lastly, his hobbies include roller skating, which he's apparently amazing at it in the Wallaby on Wheels episode, and belching poems in the Weasel Scouts for the Belch of Destiny episode. Conversely, despite his connection to Filburt, Heifer more often tolerates him than celebrates their friendship, as both of them stem from Rocko as a unifying element to their bond. He, Rocko, and Filburt get along best when they have fun on various immature adventures. He is voiced, of course, by the legendary Tom Kenny. So, what do you adore and find annoying about Heifer's character conversely? Do you feel there's strong evidence for him being a worthy best friend to Rocko?
The thing that really bothers me about Heifer is he seems like he genuinely cares for about a hot minute. And then if something is going to just send Rocko slowly over the edge, I'm going to do it just because I want to watch him freak out. And that really bothers me. He reminds me of one of those friends that you have in school or high school that they latch onto you, but you don't really connect with them. And no matter how much you try to shake them, they keep sticking around, and they're just annoying, but you still try to be nice because you still got to come back to school tomorrow and they're still going to be here and you don't want to. That's what Heifer reminds me of. Just, I'm here and you're not getting rid of me. But the thing that, because I was going to mention this with Heifer, just because we've never really talked about this, and this the second thing that I see get shared, probably more than anything, was the deleted scene from Rocko.
Well, it was the Good, Bad, and the Wallaby with the milk device.
Nope, not that one.
Oh, it's the other one. Is it the Bates Motel from?
That's the Bates Motel.
Road Rash. Yeah.
Yep. But it wasn't called the Bates Motel, BAITS.
No.
This was the No-Tell Motel. With
Holiday Inn.
With new Wawa beds, because this aired only once on Nickelodeon, and then for some reason I can't possibly fathom why, but it got on Nickelodeon's, it got on the parents' radar, and there was quite a bit of backlash about this one scene, but Heifer and Rocko are trying to pick a room for the night while they're, I'm assuming, road tripping. And first of all, this character that they've made is highly racially insensitive by today's standards. But also, they're just wanting to get a room. But this hotel is not for, what Rocko and Heifer are trying to use it for. And they say, he was like, "How long do you want the room for?" It's like, "Until tomorrow morning." All night? Woof! And at one point, they're like, "I'm sorry, all the rooms are full." And then a thing starts buzzing to let them know that the room is opening. It goes, "Oh, we have a premature departure."
Sorry, we full up. Won't have room for another 20 minutes. You wait? Oh, we have premature departure. You can have room now. How long you want?
Just till tomorrow.
All night? Okay.
Sheila, Heifer.
It's just, when I first found that delete scene, I just felt very uncomfortable because it felt it felt like a weird dark corner of lost 90s Nick history that was never meant to
It's almost
exist.
reminding me of like the Prince joke from Animaniacs, the fingerprints. It's very like, whoa.
I found prints! No, fingerprints. I don't think so.
They were edgy back then. They could do whatever they want. I mean,
They were very edgy. They were finding where the edge was.
It's that early 90s pushing the envelope craziness.
I mean, I would have done the same thing. I'm going to push a joke. Okay, that got away. I want to push a little further. Okay, that got away. I'm going to keep pushing a little further. Okay, that got away. Push a little further. Oh, you guys didn't like that one. Okay, I'll back up.
I would agree with you. For me, Heffer, I'll tell you, he's the guy. He's the sidekick I love to hate. He's like Patrick Stump combined with Stimpy. Like if you were to mash those two, you kind of get Heffer. And
you mean Patrick Stump from Fall Out Boy or Patrick Star from SpongeBob?
I'm sorry, Patrick Star. You know what? Combine Stump and Star. I don't know what's going on there. Patrick Star from SpongeBob and Stimpy. When you combine those two, and you get Heffer, and I love those two individually. I'm not sure how much I love them combined, and but I do love Heffer. He's a terrible best friend for all the great reasons for us as a viewer, for all the wrong reasons for Rocko.
Yeah, you encapsulated his existence perfectly. I was going to say the same thing. He's fun to watch, but if I were living with him, he would drive me nuts.
It also seems like he's the only friend in town. There's very limited options for Rocko for one reason or another.
Yeah, I mean, you got Heffer and Filbert, and then everyone hates his guts for some unknown reason.
Though if your choice is like Heffer and Filbert or the Chameleon Brothers, I mean...
I would agree.
Well, speaking of Filbert, he's another main character of the series, and his full name is Filbert Shellbach, which I think got later changed because before he was referred to as Filbert Turtle on the show. He is in his mid-20s in the original series and mid-40s in Static Cling, and he's a neurotic turtle who reeks of Woody Allen's persona, as we mentioned before. He lives alone in a trailer park, though later married to Dr. Hutchinson in the two-part special, The Big Question / The Big Answer, and had 4 children with her since the episode From Here to Maternity. Filbert is as introverted as he is nerdy, taking up hobbies such as fashion photography and wig snatching from birds, but he never lets that get in the way of his friendship with Rocko, which has endured ever since he was saved by his wallaby buddy on a playground when they were young kids. Filbert has also had various occupations throughout the show, including stuff on a stick fry cook, grocery store cashier, a comic shop salesman, a movie theater projectionist, a DMV worker, a crooner, a dentist in training, a bowler, a voice actor for Lester Rookford on Wacky Deli, and sci-fi novel writer in The High Five of Doom. Filbert enjoys reading, though a running gag tied to his hobby involves his catchphrase, "I'm nauseous, I'm nauseous, I'm nauseous." Fun fact, he actually vomits off-screen after saying his trademark line at the end of Sailing the Seven Z's, which we did a verses of over on Patreon. And he first mentions his vomit neurosis in the beginning of the episode Canned, so look out for those little Easter eggs. Of course, he is voiced by Doug Lawrence. So what are your thoughts on Filbert and his friendship with Rocko and how it compares to Heffer's friendship with Rocko?
From the episodes I've seen, I think Filbert is a better friend. In terms of looking out for Rocko. If you got Heffer out of the way, I think he would do. If he wasn't so neurotic, he would do more for Rocko. You get Heffer in the way, then he'll just enjoy the chaos too. But I do enjoy Heffer. I'm sorry, I do enjoy Filbert. I did get a big kick out of the episode where he was trying to be a dentist and ended up poking a hole in somebody's tooth. I found a small hole.
Yeah,
but
Rocco's tooth.
But yes, but I do. It's Woody Allen. Either you like him or you don't. And I have enjoyed Woody Allen, and he kind of reminds me of a more neurotic version of the twins from Doug.
Alamoose Leach, yeah, yep. They would fit in together well in the same universe, whether they all move to Doug or all move to Rocko's Modern Life. They complete the trio and play Glorak together in the twins' bedroom.
Whereas you would see like Skeeter and Heffer would not get along.
No, not at all.
Skeeter would not put up with Heffer's like no way.
Yeah. Jeez. Would Heffer even get along with Roger?
No. Roger would have gotten annoyed with Heffer. He would enjoy Heffer's chaos when it's targeted towards somebody else. But once Heffer knows that Roger's enjoying this, Heffer would latch onto Roger, and Roger would get annoyed with it super fast.
It's funny you say latch on, because I imagine Heffer's like on a similar level to Willie White, which is one of Roger's kind of minions who follows him around. Like, just smart enough to take orders, but not smart enough to think independently. And that's his, like, I don't want to say stupid, but his dim-witted charm comes to play. Yeah. What about you, Carl?
I love Filbert. He was one of my favorite characters. Still is. The neuroticism is so funny. And it doesn't get much better than you turn the page, you wash your hands. You turn the page, you wash your hands.
Yeah.
And even to this day, I don't really read comic books, but if I'm ever holding one, you better believe I'm reciting that line.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that was derived from the fact that comic books used to be printed on newsprint, and you get this weird like film off of them. So even sometimes the ink would run, so you'd have to wash your hands before you can move forward. Otherwise, your hands would look like the Sunday newspaper.
I would love to ask Joe, if he ever comes on, if Heffer and Filbert were in a sense representations of the angel and the devil on Rocko's shoulders. Because they're so chaotic good, chaotic evil in a sense. Like, I would be interested to know if there was a bit of that.
Yeah, maybe it's an extension of Rocko's conscience, because he definitely feels like a neutral party among the three.
And I wonder if you plucked Rocko out of it, if those two would be friends.
I don't think they would. I mean, Rocko's kind of like the bass player in the band. He's the glue that holds everyone together. And without that, yeah, you can get away with guitar and drums, but it's going to sound hollow, kind of like the White Stripes earlier songs.
I mean, it's kind of like the episode whenever you took Jerry Seinfeld out of it, and then you had to watch Elaine and George Costanza be friends, and they're not really.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just making this up in my head, but wasn't there an episode where Filbert and Heffer kind of do the same thing? Like, Rocko's not in the picture, and they're like, okay, well, what do we do now?
I think you're right.
What one is that?
I seem to recall that, or it might just be a throwaway scene, but that I believe that moment happened.
Yeah, the episode where they're fighting over the tickets or something, and Rocko can't go.
With Friends Like These, yeah. Yeah, that's one of my favorites. That's the season 4 premiere. Let's move on to, of course, the fourth character, who's the unofficial friend of the main character cast. We got Spunky. He's Rocko's dog, and he's got a big heart, little brain. Whole lot of energy and enthusiasm, too. This English Bull Terrier's eagerness often misleads him into trouble, from which Rocko must save him. The canine companion once fell in love with a mop, got kidnapped by a peg-legged seagull, got a ton of groceries stuck to his tongue, and nearly got eaten by a sentient garbage truck, among many, many other misadventures I can't remember here. Despite the trouble he's constantly getting into, Rocko and Spunky share an inseparable bond. He is also easily distracted by food, derived by Zero, no, not Tim Burton's Zero from Nightmare Before Christmas, and has a distinct, adorable bark, all of which cement him as an iconic character not only on the show, but in Nicktoons' pet history. Of course, he is also voiced by Carlos Alazraqui. What do you like and dislike most about Spunky? Do you feel he's right to belong as an essential character of the show, or he should be downgraded at all?
I think he's a good plot device to show Rocko's desire to be mature and adult and try to do the right thing. Like, every time we see Spunky, Rocko is trying to take care of him in some way. So I think, he works in that sense. Comedically, there's two sides of that fence, right? But I appreciate the episodes he's in, and the episodes where he's more of a central figure. In fact, one of my favorite episodes, Dirty Dog, he's the reason for the episode. So I like him. I can see, Alex, where you're coming from, thinking he's kind of annoying or taking away from the focus of.
Alex is also a cat person.
Well, I'm a cat person too, but I still like Spunky.
I gotta say though, I'm Team Alex on this. Like for me, Spunky is a one note joke, and I do feel you could remove him from the series and it wouldn't change a lot. And I'm such a big Doug fan, and Spunky is no pork chop.
But also, pork chop is anthropomorphic and way more expressive. Spunky's just an ordinary dog, which
I hope my sentence holds.
Yeah, it could be a downer for a lot of people, but I'm just going to defend that Spunky's just so gosh darn cute and reminds me a lot of my own dog. So
He's very cute.
I appreciate him for that.
I do like the character, but if you put a gun to my head and said one character has to go, it's immediately Spunky.
I would be holding on to him. I'll adopt him.
and the thing about Spunky, it's not that I find him annoying. I mean, I find Heffer annoying. What I didn't like about Spunky is how stupid the guy is, to the point where he's constantly getting in trouble and making, again, more unnecessary frustrations for Rocko. I do appreciate the sentiment between Rocko and Spunky, and some of those moments are genuinely super sweet, but they're so it's easily one-sided with the amount of times that we've seen Spunky do something just dumb that I can't even imagine a dog doing this many stupid things constantly, and that one thing, like I said, the one note joke, it just keeps going and going and going and going and going. I'm like, I don't need that. I don't need that.
It'd be interesting to ask Joel if they utilize Spunky for moments where they didn't have anything else. It's like, we got to put something here, or we got to hit a comedic beat. What do we got? It'd be interesting to know if Joe used him.
I think that's a great point. Or like somehow we have to get Rocko to a dog park, or we have to get him to the beach, or like Spunky is the thing that pulls him there.
Yeah, I'm also surprised that Spunky never had like a cat or an adversary. I mean, there's Earl the Bulldog, but he's kind of just an independent mischief maker in this series. So,
well, he kind of has an adversary in Mr. Bighead.
Yeah, because Spunky does get into salmon bushes quite a bit. But moving on to some of our main antagonists of Rocko's Modern Life, we also have Ed Bighead, who is a middle-aged man who lives next door with a deep disdain for Rocko, Heffer, Filbert, and even Spunky for their immature antics. He's a white-collar worker who hates his job at Conglommo, but despite his reluctant misery, is a faithful husband to his wife, Bev. Ed also has run for dog catcher president and lost, and worked as a birthday party clown in attempts to escape corporate hell. He and his wife briefly owned a stray bulldog named Earl, who we've seen in the Trasho Madness pilot, and he had a brief rise to the top of the corporate ladder thanks to some help from his magic meatball fortune-telling toy. It is revealed in the Put the Pasture episode that he used to be quote-unquote handsome before a blender accident caused by Heffer made him look this way, which I guess that's some weird abstract joke because he looks fine to me and he doesn't look fine handsome. And I think that's also where the handsome Squidward meme got derived from, because Ed Bighead did it first. But that's beside the point. He also used to love his job when he was first hired by Conglommo in the 1950s, an era booming with metropolitan productivity, and was based on, along with Bev, a pair of mean neighbors from Joe Murray's adolescent years. They are officially the cane toad variety of animal. And of course, he was voiced by the great Charlie Adler, who also does various voices in animation, such as Ickis from Our Monsters. What are you guys' thoughts on Ed?
My immediate impression as an adult, well, hell, even as a kid, because I say what you will, I did used to watch this with my parents, but Ed and Bev reminds me of an animated version of Al Bundy and Peggy Bundy.
I would agree with that.
Just constant misery, but she's oblivious to all of his misery. And I don't know. Every time they were on screen, I just felt gross. I don't know. I think it was the voice, especially Bev's voice, how raspy it sounded.
She sounds like a smoker.
She did, and I didn't like that sound. But and again, that was kid me. Adult, I'm like, this is hysterical. These two are hilarious.
I was just gonna say he's a great antagonist. All the episodes when he's like a central part of the plot, they're just classic episodes to me, and I love how they play Bev against Ed too in a lot of those episodes.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. Sometimes husband and wife are against each other depending on their stances, and they form alliances with other characters, or sometimes they're just working together to stomp other people's joy. It's interesting to see how that shifts depending on the scenario.
I think Carl's bang on. It always felt like Ed against everybody. It was like he was alone in that rowboat slowly sinking. You know, that was like his whole, every time you saw him, he was just out there on his own. No one was on his side, and he was for no reason at all.
Yeah, I would love to dive deeper into his psyche about that. But I think the episode Old Froggy Foggy, or Foggy Froggy, one of the two, gives a little bit of glimpse into his past before it kind of took a downturn. We also have Bev, since we just mentioned her, who is considered a main antagonist of the series. She's a strong take, no BS woman who exhibits tenacity, ferocity, and sensuality. She's the caring wife of Ed, who has been married to him for the past 40 years, and apparently going on 70 by 2023. She also enjoys watching her stories at home, cooking, and occasionally helping or being helped by Rocko, who brings out her more sensitive side. Whenever Ed needs help, she's there to take over with her strong leadership and organization capabilities. She's also the proud mom of Rachel Bighead. Overall, she doesn't mind the boys' antics nearly as much as Ed, and even participates in them on occasion, such as strip poker in the Cabin Fever episode, which she won, watching Rocko's home video at the Chameleon Brothers Cafe, and dressing up Filburt and Heffer to impersonate Ed at Conglommo during his nervous breakdown. She also reminds me a bit of my Grammy on my dad's side when she's nice, and Lucille Ball in her later years when her more smoker's voice has developed. Of course, Bev is also voiced by the great Charlie Adler. Any thoughts on her that we didn't already mention?
Told you what I thought.
I think she's a great side character, and I love that she's more of like a half villain than Ed, because she does get along with Rocko, and she doesn't seem to have a personal vendetta against the boys. I think she's just more upset whenever there's like a tense situation and just wants to be removed from it as much as possible. Moving on to supporting characters, and this will be really quick because there's only 3 of them. We have Rachel Bighead, who's formerly Ralph during the original 4-season run of the series, who is the creator of the hit animated TV show inside Rocko's Modern Life called The Fatheads, and also inadvertently Wacky Deli. She is the daughter of Bev and Ed Bighead, and found her true identity through her journey in the Rocko's Modern Life static cling reboot after spending time alone in solitude. She also once sculpted the largest still life out of a Canyon Rock face as well at the end of Wacky Deli, and now serves frozen treats in her ice cream truck, shaped like the Fathead characters. She appeared with no speaking role in the Christmas special as well, and is, of course, voiced by Joe Murray himself. We also have Chuck and Leon, the Chameleon Brothers, who occasionally pop up, and surprisingly, they have an interesting backstory, as we've learned in some episodes. They're 2 refugees from the country of Balzac who started their own cafe in O-Town to support themselves. We actually learned about this in the episode The Emperor's New Joe, to be specific. They occasionally run 2 different companies together too, including a gym, a hair salon, image consultant, and a video equipment rental store. Their bond is so tight that they've never been seen separated on screen, and often finish each other's sentences and thoughts. They are also voiced by Tom Kenny. And lastly, we have Dr. Paula Hutchinson, who is a perky, smile-filled feline professional with a silver hook for her hand. She's married to Filburt and has 4 kids with him. Whenever she ends a sentence explaining something complicated, she tilts her head 90 degrees and smiles, okay, or okay. Like many O-Town citizens, she's seen many career changes, including a dentist, surgeon, veterinarian, obstetrician, and a pharmacist. So basically anything in the medical field. She also appears in the Rocko's Modern Life Stat Cling reboot and in the Nicktoons Kart Racers 3 video game for modern consoles as one of the characters you can race. She is voice acted by Linda Wallen. Other inhabitants of O-Town, just to name a few because there's many of them, include the Beaver Cop, Bloaty the Tick, Buddy Gecko, the Cheese Squid, DMV driving instructor, who everyone refers to as Don't Get the Fat Guy, the Dog Catcher, Earl the Bulldog, the Elephant DMV instructor, Flecko the Fly, Gladys the Hippo Lady, which we all know for her catchphrase, "How dare you!" There's also Gordon the Foot, who talks, Heffer's Family of Wolves, Hollywood Studios tour guide, Mr. Dupet, Mr. No Way, one of Conglomo's more vocal employees, Mr. Smitty, Nosy, the talk show host, Peaches, the underlord, Phil the plumber, Pinky the appendix, Squirmy the ringworm, the beaver emergency responders who constantly go, hup, 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 the elves across the street, plus Mitch the three-legged elf, the hopping Hessian from the Halloween episode, the trash rats, because we're on strike, and of course, I'm a wild pig. So yeah, plenty of crazy characters involved to make Rocko's life interesting. We also have some main locales of O-Town, including Rocko's house, the Bigheads house, Hollywood, Heffer's family's house, Filbert's trailer, Chokey/Chewy/Chunky Chicken due to its various name changes, and Conglomo. And those are all the ones that are within O-Town, so I'm not including the ones that go beyond that for their settings.
You know, everybody always talks about that sequence where Rocko's trying to find a job, you know, the hotline, everybody always talks about the hotline. I never see references to the plumbing assistant, which I think is equally as funny. Can you get that? Thanks a lot.
Yeah, when I first saw that as a 7-year-old, I was rolling on the floor until the entire episode was over. I just found that hilarious and somehow got better with each, pulling up his pants. And because he's a pig, I don't know if the connection's intentional or not, but I think he might be the plumber Phil who later appears in the episode Pipe Dream, because he's also a pig and kind of a big stature too. So I wonder if that was a connection intentional or not.
I will say you didn't mention my favorite character, who is a quick throwaway from Sugar Frosted Frights. We learned that Filburt hates Halloween because of his crazy Aunt Gretchen, who was according to him, the line is, she was raised in an aquarium but refused to come out, so she grew into it, and she is just this giant turtle in an aquarium with holes for her feet coming out, kind of like the heads in Futurama, only the whole turtle. And I loved her. I thought she was just a 2-second gag, and she's my favorite.
Well, moving on, I know this has nothing to do with what we were just talking about, but I figured I'd include it because Rocko's the kind of guy who crushes pretty easily, as we've seen in our Valentine's Day Patreon episode versus. And I've found out that in addition to Melba Toast, who we've seen in Love Spanked, well, unseen because we don't actually see her, she's just referenced as the lady next door. Rocko has also developed a crush on Elisa, the mail carrier from SWAC, Claudette from I See London, I See France, and Sheila, who also roller skates in Wallaby on Wheels. How do you feel about Rocko's love life throughout the series, even though it's briefly kind of peppered in throughout?
I think it's very appropriate for a single adult person who just wants that one person special. If you've not been in the dating scene for a very, very long time, dude, this was it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, encapsulates what it's like to be a 20-something bachelor. Alrighty, I think that wraps it up for our characters section. So we're going to take a commercial break, shove some pleasant advertisements in your face, and when we return, we're going to be talking about some of our favorite notable episodes from the series, along with a very fun Say What segment here. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
We'll be back with more of Rocko's Modern Life.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Rocko's Modern Life 30th Anniversary. If you are enjoying this episode, please hit the like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends. If you are listening on a podcast app, please leave us a review where possible. These very, very simple actions on your part help others to come find us. Thank you all so much. We finally hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and we cannot thank you enough. Now it's, what else can we do? How else can we bring people in? And a big part of that relies on you. So please continue to share. Please continue to support. We can't thank you enough. You guys are awesome.
Ever wonder what it's like to creep inside Bloodstone Manor, residing deep within Funky Town? Join us next time, Slimesters, as we head full force into spooky season when we do an episode review of Doug's Halloween Adventure. It's going to be a frightfully good time, and I'm sure we're going to have some lovely guests to join us, dressed up in costume, so you won't want to miss this episode action right here on Splat Attack. And bring some candy too while you're at it, because we're going to be dressed in costume too. Trick or treat.
Yeah, well, you can check me out on Instagram as 90s Nick2, and where I show a lot of bits and pieces of my Nickelodeon collection. You'll see some screen used, props and scripts and all kinds of fun stuff from Nickelodeon Studios. And I also have available prop replica versions of the Legends of the Hidden Temple pendant. So it's like made exactly like the prop was. If you're interested, you can check those out on Etsy. Just search for Legends of the Hidden Temple pendant.
And if you would like to dive even deeper, you can follow me as well at Nickelodeon_collector on Instagram, where I really showcase a lot of my 30 plus years of collecting Nickelodeon merchandise, as well as other sort of 90s stuff that I'm into. Saved by the Bell, Full House. I've got a lot of really great props and collectibles from those shows as well. There's actually a really great Nickelodeon collectors community out there, and you can really cut it with a knife right down the middle. Those who sort of collect everything from the 90s, and those who have just started collecting recently, like more modern stuff. And it's great. It's a lot of great people, and I think between Carl's page and my page, you can really find a lot of the other collectors out there. And, great community. Please add all of us. We love the support.
We've had animated shows, we've had live action shows, but one thing we have not discussed on our channel yet is puppeteering. This is where Eureka's Castle comes into play. Brett and I sit down with a few cast members from the show to talk about some of the challenges they've faced, as well as when they knew that this was a success. You will only find this episode available on Patreon. Now, while we are talking about Eureka's Castle, and it is available now, coming up in just a couple of weeks, Mystery Files of Shelby Woo is making her grand premiere for Splat Attack, and it is a versus episode. She will actually be going up against Alex Mack. We are joined by fan of Shelby Woo and also personal friend and cast member of Splat Attack, Jordy, to look at these two Halloween-centered episodes. You will only find these episodes available on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/splatattack to get access to right now the Eureka's Castle and soon to be the Shelby Woo Alex Mack versus episode. You will also get live streams, bonus content, behind the scenes looks, as well as other content. So check us out there, make some new friends, enjoy the nostalgia together as a group.
Now back to more of Rocko's Modern Life.
Okay, well, it looks like that I finished my really quick Fatheads episode during our commercial break, and I've eaten all my pasture puffies. So now that I've energized myself for the second half of this episode, what are some notable episodes that come to mind for you from Rocko's Modern Life? Russ, Carl, Alex, rattle any off, and then I'll give you my list.
The only ones that I can really think of are the ones that we've covered on the podcast already, and I've told Brett this before. I'm terrible, absolutely terrible with episode names. I can just tell you what happened on them, but the Love Spanked and the one where he was naked, and Camera Shy, thank you, and Sailing the Seven Z's, and the Christmas episode, and the Thanksgiving.
Also, Sand in Your Navel.
Yeah, and Sand in Your Navel. We've only done about 6 on the show so far, and all of them were fan-frickin-tastic. They were all hilarious, and they all had standout moments. And those, ironically, were the ones that immediately come to mind, because whenever I was watching those episodes, I was like, I remembered this one. Because there's still quite a few that I have no memory of, but I remembered those, most of those. So, yeah. Great episodes, all 6.
For me, it doesn't get much better than Zanzibar. That's just a classic. It's so fun to watch. We're a big unruly mob. I already said Dirty Dog is one of my favorites. Magic Meatball is a fun watch. I don't remember what it's called, but the one where Filbert becomes like a lounge singer. His dream is to
It's
be a
called The
lounge
Lounge
singer.
Singer.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There he
that
is.
one's great.
Come crawl with me, oh, let's crawl away. Come crawl with me, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, there's just so many good episodes. It's if I could go down the list and be like, oh, that's a great one. That's a they're just all great episodes.
Yeah, I mean, as a diehard Rocko fan, it's hard not to love all of them because I do love all of them. But if I were to nitpick based on like some sort of significant thing that made them stand out above the rest, I have about a dozen here to mention. So, Russ, you might want to mention yours before I dive into my list.
You got it. So a couple notable mentions for me are Cruisin' and Ed is Dead. Love both those episodes. I think my personal favorites are going to be Sugar Frosted Frights and Rocko's Modern Christmas, solely because you throw me a Christmas episode, it instantly becomes my favorite. It really doesn't matter what show it is. I'm just a fan of it. And when you look at Nickelodeon Christmas episodes, I mean, they're so good. Hey Arnold Christmas is so good. Like they stand out. But I will say that I do believe, despite the fact that the Christmas episode is probably my favorite, I do think Wacky Deli is the best of the series.
Yeah. Even more so than Camera Shy, I think Wacky Deli is just it's a whole other level.
Yeah, I would love to pick Joe's brain about Wacky Deli because you can almost feel like his angst coming through. It's like a story written about almost what they were going through in a sense. There's a little bit of that in it.
Yeah, even when I did the episode review with BOC back in 2020, I felt like Ralph Bighead's frustration as an artist who just couldn't get ahead and wanted to do his creative stuff. It was all about like what's popular or what will keep people watching. So it's one of those things that an artist has to go through throughout their journey in life, where they go from like commercial success to wanting to do personal, fulfilling, purpose-driven art again. And I think that's why it elevates itself beyond the rest of Rocko, just because of the subject matter and the personal feel to it. And also the satire on animation and TV culture in general. So for me, I've got a list, so I'll just rattle them real quick before we wrap things up and head to our segments. Starting off, we've got A Sucker for the Suckomatic, which is the very first episode I ever saw, and it sucked me right in, pun intended. This one, basically, Rocko orders a giant vacuum on TV, but it looks nothing like that when he orders it, and then essentially he just goes through hijinks and ends up sucking up the entire neighborhood with this thing that has somehow gained sentience. And it's one of the more wild ones, and I like some of the crazy jokes that are involved. There's also Dear John, which is a episode. It's the only episode my father watched with me of Rocko's Modern Life, because it's based off of like Norm Abram and Bob Vila of like This Old House, where it was like that Carpenter TV show kind of guy persona. And he got a kick about of the moment where like the John character was describing these yellow screwdrivers that he'd like to play with, and he's like, "We'll be right back after these messages." Woo! And he's just like looking through the clear one, and he laughed out loud because he would do the same thing with his clear screwdrivers when he had nothing better to do on the job. So that's a fun personal one that reminded him of like Home Improvement. There's also I Have No Son, which is the first two-parter of the series and introduces Ed and Bighead's offspring, Ralph, who's now known as Rachel as of the reboot. There's also Wacky Deli, which is more or less the sequel to that. It's also a two-parter, and we already talked about his legendary status of being the original meme with its absurd, ridiculous approach to the animation industry and how it satirizes it with a 10-minute jar of mayo being brilliant and everyone just like ripping his dummy apart when he pushes him in his car to Hollywood Studios. There's also Put the Pasture, which is showing the origin of when Rocko, Heffer, and Filbert first met in high school with hilarious results. For those who may remember, that's the one where Heffer eats all the potato chips. They stuff a light bulb in his mouth, and there's like just a massive beam of light that shoots into the universe, and they get an A+ for the project. So that's worth checking out. We also have I See London, I See France, which is the first episode to be set in another country while highlighting key aspects of his culture. But most people don't remember it for it being in France. They remember it for A, the choky chicken being set in the Eiffel Tower, and B, the crazy bus driver that is just dead set on making Rocko and Heffer's life hell while they're there. We also have Future Slock, which is canonically the last episode leading to the Stat Kling reboot movie storyline, despite not being aired last. And that's where, there's a rocket that attaches itself to Rocko's house and brings in the space. And when the reboot starts, they're still in that house and they bring them back to Earth with that conglomerate rocket. So if you want to see that connection, I recommend seeing that episode, then go into the reboot. We've got the holiday episodes, Sugar Frosted Frights for Halloween, Rocko's Modern Christmas. We got the Big Question, Big Answer, which is the marriage episode where Filburt and Dr. Hutchinson get married. From Here to Maternity, where they have kids. Canned, where Rocko gets his first job at Conglommo. Fatal Contraption, which is the first and only episode where there's zero dialogue whatsoever. Belt of Destiny, which is one of my personal favorites because it's based off of Boy Scout stuff and Heffer discovers his hidden talent. Short Story, which is based off of like Grimm's fairy tales, and it's also a very sad episode. Tickle Pinky, which is another tearjerker where Rocko, spends like his last few wishes with his appendix before he passes on to the afterlife. Camera Shy, which we've already covered with hilarious results on Patreon. And of course, Uniform Behavior, which is a creepier episode parodying The Shining, where Effer is a security guard at an overnight building. Any final thoughts before we head to our segment?
I do have two final thoughts. And first, I want to talk about the actual intro to the show. And this is something that I realized in watching it. So in watching it this time around, growing up watching it, it was just a show intro. And there were things happening, but I didn't really pay attention. But now I actually realize how smart that intro is because we see Rocko's entire life unfold. He gets delivered in a kangaroo pouch, similar to a stork. We see a giant clock hits him on the head and time passes and he becomes a teenager. We see his brain get opened up and a book of knowledge goes in and now he becomes an adult. And then he gets catapulted into the real world by this giant sign, this is real world. And it cues us up to where we are. And as a kid, I never realized that the intro was taking me on his journey and telling me like, this is from the day he was born to where he is. I never knew that. I just never knew that. So I thought it was a really great intro when you really watch it.
It's brilliant in the abstract representation of, his journey through life, where it seems so simple and pleasant at first, and then he's just thrust into chaos and has to do his best to survive. And so he goes into the TV at the end, which crushes everyone. But really, isn't that just a symbol for our escapism and insecurities?
And the other interesting thing I noticed, and it started when I started paying attention to the intro, and then as I got into other shows, for one reason or another, and it may be coincidence, but I don't think so, they seem to use the imagery of clocks a lot. There are giant clocks, or there are really weird, obscure wristwatches. Nothing is digital. They're all analog, and it's very like, you see it in the intro, you've got that giant clock. I was watching Cruisin', there's a giant floating clock. You're watching Sugar Frosted Frights, you've got some of the characters, they hold up their arm, they've got these big wristwatches. There's just a lot of use of clocks. Anytime they could go to a clock, they would. And I'd be really interested to know why that was important.
Yeah, even in like Love Spanked or some other episodes where Rocko is like trying not to be late for work, it's always like we're racing the clock or hanging on the clock. Because
but there's always a clock. They were constantly animating clocks, and you would be hard pressed. I watched about 7 episodes in prep for this, and I didn't find a single episode that didn't have one. So, but if you watch Doug or Rugrats or Ren and Stimpy, you never see a clock unless they like really like I'm late for something. But other than that, they don't show it. But they always made sure to show. And I just wonder if that was some type of inside joke or they were trying to show. I don't know. There's just something I noticed.
It could lend itself to the faster pace of not only the comedy here, but also the setting, because Rocko's neighborhood is more or less a suburb outside of the city where Ed Bighead works. So it could just make it feel like a more hurried setting than say like Jumbo Street and Doug, where everything just feels more laid back and in a rural Virginia.
And we were actually talking just before the episode officially started about which variation of the theme song we liked the most. Did we like the original season 1 version? Brett was talking about how different the pilot version was, and then also the B-52 version. And Carl, which of those did you prefer?
Yeah, I'm a B-52s fan, so definitely the B-52s version. But they're both great. And I think we were talking before we started the episode. I don't even think I noticed a difference watching as a child. Until I definitely noticed as an adult. But back then, it was just the theme song, and it was great regardless. So.
Listen, B-52s, and you know what? I agree with Carl. It's like I don't actually recall the different theme song. I always recall watching it with that specific song.
I'm more leaning towards the season 1 one just because it feels more innocent and atmospheric. Like you get those weird like humming sounds of like the jungle or the Australian outback where he comes from, and you get these high-pitched harmonizing vocals that sound like some sort of characters from his world. And then you got this bass voice that's like Rocko's Modern Life instead of the B-52 singer. So for that one for me just felt more like down to earth. Like I like the B-52s one. It feels a little bit more intense and hectic and goes along with the increased chaos that we're exploring in later seasons of Rocko. But I like the simple innocence of the first season one just because it feels like him entering the adult world for the first time. And a lot of the season 1 episodes reflect that because they're based around simple things he has to do as an adult, like, oh, I gotta go grocery shopping, oh, I gotta go get my license at the DMV, simple things like that. Even give Spunky a bath. It's just like, okay, you're starting off, the training wheels are off, you're no longer in college or school or whatever, and you just have to figure out how to do these things by yourself and make it work. And I think it works for me. And plus it goes deep with my nostalgic memories too of getting in the show right when it premiered.
And see, I had no clue. I have no memory of the season 1 theme song. Whenever I was thinking of Rocko, even as a kid, I always heard it as B-52s in my head. And I didn't even know that was B-52s when I was a kid, but that's the sound. And whenever I became an adult and I did start checking out some of these episodes for the podcast, it was while I was making the podcast when I realized that's different. Why is that different? That doesn't sound like the one I grew up with. That I make this up? And of course, I found out soon after. Like, no, there's 2 versions of the theme song, but just because it's the one I associate with the most, the season 2 onward version.
Well, I think we're going to head out of O-Town and head into our segment now, which is Say What?
Say what?
Say what?
Say what?
Say what?
Say
what?
Well, for Say What, because I play, and Brett doesn't really get much of an opportunity to play, but I feel like this would be more up Brett's alley to play this version. So for this entry of Say What, I'm going to take a back seat and I'm going to host the thing and keep score while the 3 of you are going to try to guess who said which quotes from which character said each of these quotes.
We should buzz in with our own quote. Like, oh my.
All right, so let's get started with our first one. There are 9 questions altogether, and then we have a lightning round at the end. So for the first question, for 2 points, your quote is, "I hate my life."
Oh my.
Brett?
Ed Bighead.
That is Ed Bighead. 2 points for Brett. Question number 2, also for 2 points. "Bad luck and misfortune will infest your pathetic soul for all eternity."
Ding, ding, ding.
Carl?
I'm going to throw this out there. I don't know if it's right. Is it Peaches?
Nope.
It is not Peaches.
Oh my.
Brett?
Is it Filbert?
It is Filburt while he was.
I was gonna guess Filburt.
While he was reading the fortune cookie.
I'm Mr. Lucky. I'm on the lucky spin.
Brett is now up to 4 points. And speaking of, question number 3 is worth 4 points. So you guys have a chance to catch up. Give me a merit badge. Give me a merit badge now.
Ding, ding, ding.
Carl.
That is Heffer. And it's one of the best lines of the series.
Yes, that is Heffer. All right, question number 4, also worth 4 points. Woohoo! Here they are. Here's the tickets. Here they are. I found them. Here they are. Oh boy, look at that. Look at all the tickets. A ticket for you, and a ticket for you, and tickets for everybody. Now we can all go.
Oh my.
Brett?
It's me, Rocko.
Rocko.
This is when he has his nervous breakdown at the end of With Friends Like These, when they have the tickets to go to some sort of match. And he's like, oh yeah. After Heffer and Filbert have pulled him through the ringer of various obstacles, he's just like, oh yes, here they are. Here's the tickets. Here they are. Trying to keep it together.
All right, question number 5, worth 6 points. Still some chance to catch up. I mean, you have absolutely no charisma, and almost everyone hates you.
Oh my.
Brett.
Is it Bev Bighead?
That is Bev Bighead.
I think she's saying that in response to why Ed feels like everyone hates him.
All right, question number 6 for 6 points. Little Poots! Little Poots! Oh dear.
Ding ding.
Russ.
Is that... I want to say that's Really, Really Big Man.
That is Really, Really Big Man. Russ is officially on the board.
On the board.
And we still got a couple more, so still a chance to catch up. Question number 7 for 8 points. Rocko, you put me in a jar?
Ding ding.
Oh my.
Oh, it's a tie.
Was it 3-way or
Alex
2-way?
makes the call. Who got it?
Let's see. Well, let's just a chance to catch up. We'll go with Carl.
That's Pinky.
That is Pinky. Carl had the least amount of points so far, but that has now changed. So far, the score is Brett with 14, Carl with 12, and Russ with 6. Still chance to catch up, because this next quote is also worth 8 points. You better keep up, Big Head. You better keep up or keep out.
Oh my.
Brett?
Mr. Dupet.
That is... it's not Mr. Dupet. At least that's not what I got here.
Oh. Oh my.
Brett?
Can I answer again?
Sure.
Mr. No Way.
Mr. No Way.
Yeah, it was in the Magic Meatball episode, I remember now.
Final question for 10 points. You'll never be satisfied by a normal woman because the elf witches are so beautiful, and you'll spend the rest of your life searching for that same beauty again. Yes? Wow, you're an idiot.
Oh my.
Brett?
That is the elf fanboy speaking about the elf wenches, and then there's like an elephant guy who's wearing a nuclear swans shirt who's saying, wow, you're an idiot, and that is in the canned episode.
You are correct, good sir.
The way he says it is hilarious and also surprisingly relevant to nerddom culture today.
All right, so lightning round is
new lightning music. Lightning sounds.
Name as many Rocko's Modern Life episode titles as possible within 15 seconds, and you get 2 points per correct answer.
You're all time.
Yeah, who's going to go first? Russ, you want to go first since you want to catch up?
Sure.
All right.
Go.
Rocko's Modern Christmas, Future Schlock, Static Cling, Put Out the Pasture, Cruisin', Wacky Deli, Sugar Frosted Fright. That is dead.
Time's up.
All right.
What, I get maybe 6?
Russ, you got 7.
7. That's better than I thought I would do. All right.
All right, so that gives you a total of 14 points for that round. And Carl will do the same for you.
A Sucker for the Suckomatic, Dirty Dog, Zanzibar, Sand in Your Navel, Carnival of Knowledge. Is that one? I can't remember.
Stop.
It's not easy.
It's not.
It is not easy.
Brett, just for clarification, is Carnival of Knowledge, is that the name of that episode?
It's Carnival Knowledge, but I'll give it to him.
Okay. So that is, you got 5.
Okay, so 10 points.
Which gives you a total of 10 points. So you two got very close with each other. Brett, do you want a round just
Oh, yeah.
All right.
You can see if I can break 100.
All right.
Oh, this competition has me nauseous.
Yes, I will time it myself. Okay. Ready, set, go. Sucker for a Suckomatic, Dirty Dog, Leapfrogs, Cabin Fever, Wacky Deli, I Have No Son, Fatal Contraption, Zanzibar, Icy London, Icy France, Swack, The Fatlands, okay, time's up.
It trips you.
That gave you 22. So, Brett, you had a final score of 54 points, which I think that's a new record, isn't it?
I think so. I think my previous record was 36.
And that leaves Carl with 22 and Russ with 20, which is still a very respectable score altogether.
I'll take it.
It would be the equivalent of facing me with James Bond trivia. You might as well give it up. But it's
listen. I was always fighting for second. All right.
It's all for fun.
Oh yes.
Yeah. All right, guys. So that was pretty fun for Say What. Probably a little bit more for me than you guys, but that's okay. No prizes are at stake. No money's at stake. It's just for bragging rights. Anyways, let's go into our collector's corner to see what kind of fun goodies we have to share with our Slimesters.
And now, it's time for Collector's Corner.
Alrighty, so now that we're in our collector's corner, what do you got for us?
Not a lot. Tough property to have a lot of merchandise on, and some of my stuff it's kind of painted my basement. Had to take my collection apart. So I've got some really cool cells and stuff, but couldn't find those. But what I could find, so Joe Murray did a Kickstarter many years ago. He was funding a new project he was working on, and during that, he was offering up personalized drawings at a very reasonable price. And so I kind of got the whole cast. So it's tough to see with the filter on here, but there's
nice.
Rocko and Spunky, and of course we've got Heffer, and then we've got the Bigheads, and my personal favorite, Filburt.
Wow, they all look
so
great.
we've got, and you know what? He must have had to do thousands of these because he sold quite a few of them. And, you know, I saw a bunch of people as well, and they're all a little different. As you could tell, he just smashed them out real quick. But that's what I got.
Yeah, I've got a couple things. I shared this last time, but because we're at, doing Rocko again, I'll share it again. One of my Rocko animation cells there.
Very cool.
From Dirty Dog.
Love it.
Love it.
And I like Russ said, there's just not much out there of Rocko, and being a animated thing, like there's just not much period besides cells or maybe scripts from the production, but I've never seen one of those for sale. So I broke into my VHS vault and I grabbed a few tapes from the collection. So, old VHS tapes. This one is from November 28th, 1996. It's a nonstop Nicktoons weekend.
Yes.
So it's a Rocko marathon. There's a few episodes on there.
Oh, fun.
Even autofocus or not. But so that's one. And then I pulled a couple other These are Stickly Nick in the Afternoon blocks, also with Rocko
Oh.
episodes on. So
Very cool.
yeah, not much there, but yeah.
That's okay.
The nonstop Nicktoons weekend, that one. Do you know if that's the one off the top of your head where Keenan and Kel were hosting?
I think it is. Yep. Where Kel is like powering the machine
Yes.
with the bicycle. Yeah.
The only reason I had just put together one of the We'll Be Right Back episodes for Thanksgiving, and they're all Thanksgiving spots, and I have a whole section that is just the Keenan and Kel nonstop Nicktoons weekend section. So that's fresh in my mind right now. So if you want to check it out, Slimesters, head over to Patreon and stick around in November.
As a Patreon member, it's worth it. You're gonna want to do it.
Yeah. Endorsed by our guests. And Russ has also been on our Camera Shy Patreon episode, and he had a blast. So go check it out. There's more content for you. Before we close out Collector's Corner, I'll just show these again real quick. I love collecting action figures and vinyl figures and stuff like that. So I have the Heffer one from No Pain, No Gain Knitbox vinyl here. I just like seeing him in a 3D form that's fairly show accurate to him. So there's that. And then, of course, the lounge singer version of Filburt. Looking very dapper, although his shell is not showing up too well thanks to green screen technology. That should really be blue screen, because I prefer green as a color. And then lastly, we got Rocko from the Hut Sut Raw episode with the little knapsack, which I like. I have seen Funko Pop figures that kind of use a very similar head mold, and I used to have it, but I lost it in moving, so I don't have that anymore. And I used to have the Rocko's Modern Love and the Rocko's Maniac or Mechanic Madness VHS tapes that used to be orange. And he was like, his heart was out, and then for the other one, he was running away from the Succomatic and the Trasho Madness garbage truck. So,
Got a shirt.
Yeah, I got a new shirt. Check that out. That's a collectible. It's from a place called T-Love, I believe, and they do some really fun retro shirts. Some of them tie-dyed, some of them solid, and I'll be wearing a couple of them later this season. Definitely for a Ren and Stimpy episode and an Angry Beavers one. So check those out once we get to those topics. Alrighty, guys. I think we're all out of energy from O-Town. I was trying to make that like an onomatopoeia, but didn't work. Any closing thoughts about the 30th anniversary of Rocko or the series as a whole?
Closing thoughts. As always, it's just a big thank you to both our guests. This was a lot of fun to have you both here. Rocko is a fantastic series, and I'm even though I've not got the chance to watch the whole thing again as an adult, I still very, very much enjoy it. I look forward to watching more. Thank you to both Carl and Russ for being here. It was such a blast to have you guys here, and I look forward to having you both on again, both as individuals and hopefully together as a group again.
Yeah, this was a blast. Thanks for having us. I love to wax nostalgic on my favorite Nick shows. So anytime you want to talk, let me know.
Totally agree. Appreciate it. Second time on the podcast, much like on SNL, when you do 5, you get that jacket. So I'm looking forward to
yes.
looking forward to another 3 so I can, but it was really fun to be, on with Carl. That's super exciting. We're two guys who have sort of respected each other for a while now. So this is a really cool moment. And as for Rocko itself, man, I'm just so glad I lived through the live sort of run of it, and I was that perfect age for it. I think there's something to be said about being, like a kid in that moment, and Rocko was part of that. So it shaped some of who I am, and it's just great to be talking about it still.
Wholeheartedly agree. So thankful I discovered it as a kid and have it influence my life in a positive way, from animation to just outlooks on life and how to handle the craziness that we deal with every day. I have 2 things to mention real quick, or 2.5. One, Carl, if next time we have you on, we'll give you your SNL golden jacket, because that'll be the 5th time. Number 2, I forgot to add before when we were talking about banned scenes that the episode Leapfrogs was banned after it aired once, and the second segment would often be replaced with, I think, The Good, Bad, and the Wallaby, but I have to double check that. It's on the wiki page, so Slimesters can go do their additional research if they'd like. And third, I have a quote from Joe Murray where he draws Rocko on YouTube when I saw a recording of that I think perfectly encapsulates his experience during the show. He says, "Rocko was more of a personal project for me, but there's a lot of butting heads with the network which took the enjoyment out of it. Camp Lazlo was more enjoyable because Cartoon Network at the time was a better home for the show. Advice? A life in art is the most challenging and rewarding path you can take. Make sure you have the stomach for it and take the ride. It's a blast." Well said, Joe. And hopefully if you're hearing this, we'd love to have you on to talk Rocko or anything else that you've had a hand in the animation world. Closing question. If Rocko's Modern Life were to continue as a revived series today, what would some Season 5 scenarios look like? Write to us via email at splatattack2021@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram at splatattackpodcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at splatattackpodcast. Or interact with us wherever you find us on social media via Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or Patreon, where we got some fun bonus episodes in case you haven't heard that already. Thank you again, both Carl and Russ, for joining us. It was an absolute blast to have you on again and just share the nostalgic memories of one heck of a Nicktoon. Until then, Alex, will you scrape the slime off the wall for us, please? I've got to convince Rocko to tune up his jackhammer and practice for the Great American Jack-Off this weekend.
Aye, aye, co-captain. Now, while you do that, Heffer, Filbert, and I will try to win some tickets from that Crazy-Eyed Walrus's radio contest to go see it.
I heard you can only win 2, though, so you might want to find an alternative plan to attend.
To the Old Town Googleplex!
Hey, wait! That's not what I had in mind. You're supposed to enjoy jackhammering together with me. Oh, what's the use? Come on, Rocko. Let's go see what else we can do to pass the time. Oh, look! A board game. It's called Spank the Monkey? Gee, I wonder how you play. Splat you later, Slimesters. Oh my. Anniversary Day is a very dangerous day.
Survive a whole week without an episode of Rocko's Modern Life? Never! Can you last a few more days? Never! Without an eye-popping? Never! Flattening? Never! Walloping Rocko adventure? Never! Then Nickelodeon's never! Gonna keep you waiting. Oh! Look! For another episode of Rocko's Modern Life. This Sunday at 11:30, 10:30 Central on Nickelodeon.